Call this meeting of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners to order. Let the record reflect all 5 commissioners are here. And I'd like to introduce Pastor Larry Webb from Shadow Mountain to give us the invocation. Pastor Webb? You got to unmute. You're still mute. There you go.
All right, thank you. More than 27 centuries ago, the prophet Isaiah recorded these words from God himself. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed or distressed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Father God in heaven, I am so grateful that you are here for us because we desperately need you. And not just here in this microcosm called Douglas County, but across this nation. 3 months ago, none of us could have predicted this coronavirus or the senseless death of Mr. Floyd. None of us anticipated these radicals and revolutionaries that want to create chaos, destabilize our government, eliminate our much needed law enforcement agencies, and basically turn people against one another. And we admit we are a nation in crisis. So God, we pray for healing for those that have contracted this disease. We pray a hedge of protection around those that are still most vulnerable. We pray for societal order over the disorder and confusion in the streets. We pray that the lawlessness and destruction would stop and that the innocent would be spared. We pray that justice would prevail over injustice. We pray for reason and resolve to overcome fear and panic. We pray for love to win out over hate. And we pray for changed hearts. Father, bless these men and bless this meeting. And I ask it all in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
We do need the prayers. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance by the Douglas County Manager, Mr. Patrick Cates.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Now we'll move on to public comment. Public comment cards and comments left on the county's website prior to the board meeting have been compiled and made a part of the supporting materials that have been provided to the county commissioners and public for review. Only 2 periods of public comment will be taken during this meeting, once at the beginning of the board meeting and again at the end of the meeting. Public comment will not be taken on each agenda item. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person who has left a voice message on Douglas County's public comment phone line 775-783-6007 once a public comment period has been opened. It is now opened, and I hope you're receiving them. Once public comment closes, the voice messages will be played to the public and county commissioners in the order they are recorded. No more than 1 voice message public comment per person will be played during each public comment period. Douglas County's public comment line became available to take public comment at 1 p.m. Public comment will remain open for at least 5 minutes to allow members of the public to call or until the last caller has finished leaving a voice message on the county's public comment phone line. It is open. Have you received any?
Amy Poole for the record. Yes, I have 5 currently. I will start playing them.
Okay. 104.
WALLER. I'd like to thank John Erb for keeping the RTC up to date on the Main Street Management Plan Loop Road. Now is the time for you as commissioners to request an update. I researched the most recent RTC meeting minutes. In the February 2019 meeting packet for the RTC, Carl Hastings stated that they are looking to make the existing alignment between 2 points, 1.1 mile, a local Douglas County road. There should have been a red flag. Why hasn't Larry Walsh or Wes Rice reported to the Board of Commissioners this request as they are on that committee? Is this in the current budget with the COVID cuts? This must be answered. We cannot continue to put our heads in the sand and then magically find a funding source for all these Main Street Management Plan requirements. The TRPA Main Street Management Plan has identified this as a county-owned road. I request John Erb, the RTC committee, Carl Hasty, whoever is in the know, needs to provide an informational presentation on what it will cost to construct and own and maintain this 1.1 miles. On April 16, 2020, I submitted comments to you asking what is going on about owning a local road, and I have been completely ignored and nothing has come forward to the board. The depiction in the Main Street Management Plan states it'll be under local control owned by the city of South Lake Tahoe and Douglas County. From the Douglas County RTC February meeting, Carl Hasty, he acknowledged appreciation for backing from Douglas County with setting this money aside for the project. Mr. Hasty continued saying it is important for them to show contribution for a match to the federal side. This project was approved last year and they are starting the design. An agreement like this is important in moving forward and ask for the support of your board. Commissioner Walsh questioned if this is the roadway in the casino quarter. Carl Hasty responded, yes, this is the state line project of 1.1 mile section. Next, for possible action from another meeting, discussion to provide staff, this is RTC, staff direction regarding Douglas County draft 5-year transportation plan. RTC meeting June 19th, which is tomorrow. Commissioner Rice, in the previous minutes, Commissioner Rice questioned why he didn't see anything in the 5-year plan about the loop road. John responded saying that there are reserves for the Highway 50 revitalization. Marissa Fox, representing Tahoe Douglas Visitors Authority, wanted to confirm and reiterate that approval of the project is contingent upon Douglas County's pledge to direct 0.5% of TOT. I repeat, time to have this agendized for the public and commissioners so we know what's going on. Do we have a signed agreement? Has this been committed? If any money is expected?
Okay, time ran out on that one.
Oh,
Lynn Muzzy, M-U-Z-Z-Y. The values section of the Douglas County Strategic Plan claims that our county leaders conduct themselves honestly and ethically, and that presumably our commissioners accept responsibility for their actions. What values led this board majority to put RDA 2 on the fall ballot, only to rush through a $34.25 million commitment for RDA 2 that deliberately prevented the taxpayers a say in its funding? RDA 2 has supporters on the Board of County Commissioners as well as supporters in the community that have claimed great benefit to Douglas County taxpayers. If it's such an evidently good deal, rescind the funding and put the whole shooting match on the ballot and make your airtight case to the voters. What are you guys afraid of? Folks might just get the idea that you're putting a favored bunch of campaign contributors ahead of what's best for the taxpayers. We can't have that. Speaking of which, regarding agenda item 3, what values justify paying pro-development consultancy Wood Rogers for slanted recommendations as political covers to give indulgences to your developer constituency? Regarding agenda item 11, what values rationalize paying thousands of taxpayer dollars for the Moss Adams phony report that Douglas County has a challenging community environment due to a vocal minority of residents with strong anti-development sentiments? The report cited a NIMBY culture as a motive for opposing uncontrolled residential building. Some county insiders who want to slur community activists fed Moss Adams that mischaracterization. As to the substance of the claim, Douglas County voters have now replaced 2 sitting commissioners who supported uncontrolled residential development and kept another supposed servant of the establishment out of county government. This should be a clear message that the current board majority's support for reckless growth is out of step with their constituents. Douglas County department managers and Mr. Cates should find the Moss Adams report insulting, suggesting on packet page 491 that the county would benefit from bringing together a cross-departmental group to define and document the overarching objectives, roles, and responsibilities of each major player, as if senior management had to be led to that policy by some Captain Obvious consultant. Our professional managers and the taxpayers who funded this waste of time and money deserve better than this sort of condescension and criminal misuse of county funds. On the plus side, on packet page 492, the community participation and activation item suggests that the county encourage participation from groups, clubs, and individuals. Sounds like a role for the good governance group.
Okay, the next one.
Good afternoon. This is Jack Jacobs, Jackjacobs. We are the owners operators of the Berry Farm here. I'm a very involved and volunteer citizen with this county, which I love. On various boards, and I've spoken to a variety of other businesses. I'm here calling in regards to item number 12 in support of a positive review of Patrick Cates. We've been working with him since this last year and are a pleasure to have him here, especially considering some of our past folks we've had. He's brought stability and formed a really strong team. He's been helpful for lots of changes that have occurred from the last years. He's very approachable. He enables our businesses to work more effectively around this county. Recently, working with him on COVID issues, I find that in all the impacts to us on our business, we appreciate what he's done and the dedication and the comprehensiveness of his efforts. We look forward to a long and productive relationship with Patrick. Thank you.
Slade. It is obvious that there are people within the county administration who unfortunately are not at all balanced in their outlook on growth and development. That is certainly true of community development, and in particular, the director. This is probably why the county has a tendency to hire consultants who are pro-development. On item number 3, to hire Wood Rogers to consult on the master plan update. For starters, there was a study done in 2016-17 by a state line firm, which is still relevant. Why do we need a Reno firm to do another study and collect data that we already have? Why was community development unable to complete this task that they were given 13 months ago? That is unacceptable. The fact that Wood Rogers states that they would be reliant on the UNR Center for Development Economics, it is an indication of pro-development bias. Professor Harris, who was referenced as part of that team, came to Douglas County in 2002 to argue against the Sustainable Growth Initiative and to support development. Given that SGI was approved by the voters, it's clear that Mr. Harris's viewpoint was rejected by our residents then, as it would be now. We do not need yet another study at this point. Staff should finish the update that should have been completed months ago. That means we have to wait until next year to finalize the update, and so be it. We have already waited 4 additional years for this update that was due in 2016. What's a few more months at this point? On item 11, likewise, Moss Adams, who should be completely apolitical, has made several biased, false, and offensive claims that should eliminate them from consideration as a consultant for community development. They belittle what they refer to as a small minority of residents with strong anti-development sentiments. They seem unaware that the Sustainable Growth Initiative and Growth Management Ordinance were both approved by a majority of voters. They also seem unaware that our residents, in formulating our 96 master plan, made it clear that they wanted to keep our rural character and that they felt strongly that a high quality of life and the particular features which make this county so attractive, like open space and scenic beauty, should be a high priority. Their offensive reference to NIMBYs make it sound like they don't think that existing residents have the right to express their opinion on when, where, and at what rate growth should occur. That is absurd and insulting. Where do they come up with these offensive ideas? Apparently, it is from the so-called stakeholders that they interviewed, who they don't identify. It wouldn't be a surprise to learn that this includes the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Council, the building industry, the Realtors Association, and the gaming industry, which would include big developers like the Park family and Mike Pegram. Most residents would refer to them as special interest groups, not stakeholders. They are the small minority who focus on profits, not community. Moss Adams' obvious bias and false offensive statements should make you reject their entire report.
James McCallop, McKalip. I am not opposed to item 3. I have comment. As part of a committee to develop a community plan for the ranchos, I can tell you that we met that the plan was presented to the board through the GRID manager scheduled 2 public workshops for the purpose of getting feedback to the proposed plan. The governor then imposed a shutdown that forced the cancellation of those meetings. I don't believe that the board as well as staff can reschedule before phase 3 begins. As a Rancho resident, as well as a committee member, I hope that there is no rush to the master plan that will leave out or diminish the contribution of the county's largest community. I'm also not sure whether there is a need to go outside or highly competent county staff to produce a master plan at this cost. Thank you. I have a comment on item number 11. The comment refers to item 11, page 46 of the packet, 3rd paragraph, under the heading Project Context. Terms are being used like vocal minority and NIMBY. Professional document using this type of language is appalling. Not sure the term professional should even be applied. Recent elections have shown that a majority of voters have concerns about growth. As I'm running for the Ranchos Board, I walk throughout the community talking to many residents. They are 5-1 against growth, and that's probably a conservative number, primarily over concerns about water, traffic, and loss of open space. They don't feel that in approving development, the county has done enough to mitigate these issues, something that is essential to proper planning. And from no one suggesting anything like NIMBY. With Mons Adams' limited understanding of the people of Douglas County and their concerns, I think someone else should have prepared this document. It's dismissive of an overwhelming number of residents. Thank you.
Hi, this is Matthew Lauren. That's M-A-T-T-H-E-W, last name Lauren, L-O-R-N-E. And this is regarding agenda item number 4, the Lucchese County Road easement abandonment proposal. That's on the agenda today, June 18th. I'd like to state my opposition to it. I own a property just north of this proposal, and the abandonment would essentially take all county parking and give it to 638 Ferris Lucchese, and would leave my property with essentially nothing. This is an old Tahoe situation where you have 2 properties that have no parking on the parcels themselves, so we rely totally on county land for parking. So if the abandonment goes through currently as proposed, it'll leave my property with no parking. Possibly, I actually will have 1 dirt pull-out parking that's located in front of my property, but we're talking about a 2,000 square foot home. I believe there's numerous other options that should be explored before this current proposal is looked at, such as creating actually more parking in the county easement, with parking easement, parking rights, possibly a much smaller abandonment, which would allow the proponent to access his actual property so he could build parking on the property. Anyway, there's maybe even creating additional parking across the street. And this parking is not just used for the residents, it's used for safety vehicles, it's used for access, it's used for turnarounds. So I believe there's just all sorts of other options that exist that really need to be looked at first. The property in question as well, the topography, the land allows for creating additional parking. It's not very steep. It's got a slope and that sort of thing. Anyway, I sympathize with the proponent because he does need.
That one timed out.
Hello, my name is Carlo Luri, last name Luri, representing myself and Bentley Heritage State Distillery, and I am commenting on item number 12, the review of County Manager Patrick Cates. We just want to voice our support for Mr. Cates and wish him a long employment with Douglas County. He's been a pleasure to work with. It's no secret that we've had a challenge retaining leadership in the county, and it's been very refreshing to have somebody who is looking out for the long-term prosperity and ongoing success of the county. He is very active in the business community and has been very proactive and has done an excellent job in responding to the recent emergencies that we've had in the county. So in summary, I'd just like to reiterate that we fully support Mr. Cates and wish him well in his ongoing role. Thank you.
My name is Keith Rubin, Keith-Rubin, Douglas County resident. I would like to voice my support for Mr. Cates in his role as county manager. His leadership has moved the county closer to obtaining federal funding for Mower Parkway, towards completing the Martins Loop Trail, and meeting the unprecedented management and fiscal challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. His efforts with the governor's office on behalf of the working people of Douglas County is gratefully appreciated. To use a sports analogy, it is refreshing to finally have someone in this position who can move the ball down court rather than just dribble in place. Thank you.
Jeannie Shizuru, Shizuru. I would like to invite the public to a live in-person court hearing on Thursday, June 25th at 1:30 p.m. in the District Courtroom number 2, or they can go to GoToMeeting, code 415-975-477. And the meeting room is Douglas District Court 2. This meeting will decide the Park Ranch Holdings lawsuit against the 2,500 home referendum. I want to read a paragraph out of our brief because I think it really articulates the citizens' position very well. The development agreement is grossly mischaracterized when Park in its pleadings incorrectly alleges that the scope of influence of this development agreement is restricted to only one property, and as such is administrative in nature. Indeed, the far-reaching county-wide effects of this development agreement, the likes of which have not been seen before in Douglas County, is and will be huge. As an example, the road county obligated itself to pay for Mower Parkway running through parkland and serving park houses will almost be exclusively paid for with taxpayer dollars. The county does not have the funding. Hence, under normal circumstances, there would be a general obligation bond requiring the vote of the people. Instead, the park development agreement bypasses and circumvents the people's right to approve or disapprove a general obligation bond. The likely way it would be funded by simply folding county's obligation to build the road into the development agreement. A development agreement cannot be used to circumvent the law requiring the consent of the people as evidenced by a vote. The county-wide ramifications of this development agreement go even further beyond this particular circumvention. I would also like to express my opposition to item number 10, the possible settlement with Keith Story, waiving a possible $5,000 county fee for a lot split. This seems to be a potential giveaway. It sounds like the county didn't have money or any cash to settle with Keith Story, so they offered this $5,000 fee and a possible lot split. That seems really rinky-dinky, as you just give away a lot when you've got a lawsuit that you think you might want to settle. I also want to express my opposition to number 11. I have renewed interest in applying for the audit committee, given the totally inappropriate diatribe in Moss Adams' report in the background and context of describing anti-growth citizens as some kind of connection with why the development review process and building permit process has to be improved in Douglas County. What the citizens are doing or thinking has nothing to do with what Moss Adams should be doing.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Renee, R-E-N-E-A, Louie, L-O-U-I-E, Executive Director of the Business Council of Douglas County. I have served in this role for 20 years this year and have worked with many county managers in my time. I am speaking today in regards to item number 12, the evaluation of County Manager Patrick Cates. Douglas County business owner and the communities at large, the Douglas County employees, and you, the board members, rely on Patrick's leadership, knowledge, vast experience, extensive background, and expertise in state government and professionalism in leading our county each and every day. This year has been like no other year in this county's history. Mr. Cates has been faced with more unknowns, more challenges than any other manager that has served before him, I believe. While I could spend several hours sharing with you the tremendous support, guidance, calm, level head, and even hand Mr. Cates has shown for the hundreds of needs of the business sector and the citizens of this county. Today, we are only limited to 3 minutes, and I will certainly honor that and be brief. Massive shutdowns, administrative leaves, essential business, urgent matters on a daily basis, and so much more, literally commanded by the governor overnight. Mr. Cates never has wavered and has always responded nearly daily and sometimes hourly at every turn when everyone needs him. That includes business owners, citizens, and his staff. The Champions Task Force that has been in place for several years rose to the challenge under Patrick's leadership and his staff. We have convened nearly every 2 weeks virtually by video since March. This was to ensure that all sectors of the economy, business owners, and community members were all receiving relevant and urgent data and reporting facts to ensure all information was on task, on par, and disseminated very quickly for him and his team to all of our members and to all agencies that he needed critical data shared with. We did so as a team. Mr. Cates has been tireless and professional since his very first day on the job. Certainly, he could never predict what was going to face him this year. We wish to thank Mr. Cates for all that he has done for the county in his entire service and not just during this pandemic. We value his hard work, his dedication, commitment to making this place the best place to live, to work, and to play every day. And he does so always with a spirit of partnership.
Okay, that one was cut off at 3 minutes. And that was the last public comment that I have received for opening public comment.
Okay, we'll wait 5 minutes from 128.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, staff, and ladies and gentlemen. For the record, this is Steve Teixeira, S-T-E-V-E. Teixeira is T-E-S-H-A-R-A. I'm speaking today as the Chief Executive Officer of the Lake Tahoe South Shore Chamber of Commerce, also known as Tahoe Chamber, on agenda item 12. And I would simply like to reinforce the comments made a little earlier in this public comment period by Renee Louie, the Executive Director of the Business Council of Douglas County. We have found Mr. Cates to be accessible, to be fair-minded, to be willing to listen, and to consistently be acting in the best interest of the county. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any more at this point.
We'll move on with the agenda, starting with approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion from anybody?
Yeah, I would move to approve today's meeting, June 18th, 2020.
I'll second.
Second. Is there,
Not the meeting.
hello? Chair will second. So we have a motion by Commissioner Nelson and a second by the chair. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays, the motion carries. Move on to approval of the previous minutes. We have two sets of meetings, a regular meeting and a joint meeting. Do I have a motion on the minutes? Any corrections first? No corrections? And we need a motion.
I'll move that we approve the draft minutes of the May 7th, 2020 regular Board of Commissioners meeting and the joint meeting with the County Commissioners on May 8th at 1 p.m.
Second.
So I think Commissioner Ingles got in there first. So we have a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Ingles. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays, the motion carries. 5-0. And we'll move on to consent calendar. Any items to be pulled by the commissioners? No items, okay. Anyone else want to pull an item? Seeing none, then we'll move on towards the consent approval of the consent calendar. And do we have?
I move the consent calendar be approved as presented.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by Commissioner Walsh. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays, the motion carries. Mr. Cates, before we go any further, earlier you had indicated that item 5 on the agenda was going to be pulled. Is it going to be pulled? Or has it been pulled?
It needs to be pulled, sir.
Okay, so we have item 5 that will be pulled. We should have mentioned that in approval of the agenda. But since we didn't, we can still do it. So we'll just, when we get to item 5, we'll just pull it. Is that okay? All right. So item 1. I gotta go back to my calendar, to mine. Item 1 is titled for possible action, discussion to submit a recommendation to the state engineer regarding an application for change in water use application number 89694 made by USDA Forest Services Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit LTBMU that proposes to change the place and manner of use of existing permit 12024. Certificate 4141. The proposed change in use is from recreation to domestic use in Lake Tahoe, Douglas County to fish and wildlife enhancement use in Douglas County, Carson City, Washoe County, Nevada, and El Dorado and Placer counties in California. Ricker.
Commissioners, Phil Rittker, Director of Public Works. For the record, I'm presenting this item. In accordance with the NRS, any request with the state engineer to move water rights from one county or territory into another county is required to be heard by the various boards or commissions in each of those jurisdictions after public noticing for a 3-week period, which we have complied with. This request The request dates back to some very old water rights in the Nevada Beach area, part of the U.S. Forest Service. And what they are essentially proposing is to, or what they are petitioning the state engineer to do is to remove the current use of those water rights. They were currently being used to be pumped out of the lake for recreation use and domestic use at the state beach, at Nevada Beach, I should say. And what this proposal is to remove that and allow that water to remain in the lake. By virtue of leaving it in the lake, there is no point of diversion anymore. It's strictly the lake itself, which is why there are all entities surrounding the lake are required to hear this petition. The action that you would take today, it would simply be a recommendation to the state engineer as to whether or not you support this application, but it is in the jurisdiction of the state engineer to make the final determination. Are there any questions? If there's questions, I can take them now.
Questions from the board?
Chair.
Commissioner Ingalls.
Mr. Ritter, we wouldn't be opening a Pandora's box to be able, so that people could move water rights out of a particular basin or anything with this, would we?
It is in the state. No, I mean, I guess the way to answer that question is no, you're not. It is in state law and the Nevada revised statutes, the ability to petition the state engineer to do this to move it within counties, or to move water rights. The approval of that, though, is strictly that of the state engineer. I mean, it's in his jurisdiction and his discretion as to whether or not that's approved. What you're essentially doing here is a public hearing on that transfer, and allowing the public to speak as to whether any given transfer like this is agreeable to the general public and or the board as you represent the county in which the current water rights are in, or the current water, in this case, the current usage of the water rights. It does not. I mean, any petition like this will have to be brought before this board in the future. So you essentially assess each petition on its own merits, not as a blanket statement against anything, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Further questions? Commissioner Rice.
My question is, what is the water being used for now?
So currently, in its inception, the water was pumped from Lake Tahoe, an intake. There was an intake, a lake intake at Nevada Beach that pumped it into a holding tank, and that water was used on the original Nevada Beach for the restrooms, some of the domestic use there, and some irrigation and purposes on the beach itself. Around 2006, 2008 time period, they connected that system to municipal. It's now connected to municipal, and they abandoned that. So the actual pumpage of water from the lake and its use on land terminated essentially in use, I think, at around the 2008 time period. So there has not. This is really, I think, they're going back right now to clean up their water rights records, to preserve their water rights for future, but essentially acknowledge that right now the water is in the lake and not being pumped out.
So if we approve this, it does not mean that the pipes at Nevada Beach will go dry.
That's correct. But no, that not at all. Matter of fact, the infrastructure that was used to pump the water from the lake and supply it domestically has actually been abandoned and removed.
Thank you.
Further questions from the board? Mr. Ricker, I have kind of a follow-up to Mr. Rice's question, and that is it going to have any impact on firefighting?
No, it would not. The Nevada Beach area is currently connected to domestic water or to the public water system. So it's on a public water system with hydrants and fire flow. That would be actually considered, I think, an upgrade. The original system that was installed, the system there is abandoned, would not have supported any fire suppression needs. It was only purely domestic, what we call domestic use.
Well, they're abandoning a 10,000 gallon tank up there. Are they going to dismantle the tank?
To the best of my knowledge, Commissioner Penzel, that tank already has been removed. It was a concrete tank and a concrete and pump station. All of that infrastructure was removed back in the 2008 time period when they did the upgrades to the state beach, to that beach, I should say.
I didn't address that in the backup then. I was just wondering about it. All right. When you say to the best of your knowledge, that means it is not there any longer. Is that correct?
The information I received, that's correct, Commissioner Penzel. The information I received when I queried the U.S. Forest Service and on this project was that they provided me with photographs and documentation from the 2006 to 8 time period prior to the removal of that infrastructure. So I interpreted that to say that infrastructure no longer exists.
Okay. Further questions from the board? Seeing none, we'll be looking for a motion then.
Mr. Chair, I move to submit a recommendation to the state engineer in support of application 89694 submitted by the USDA Forest Service LTBMU to change the place and manner of use of existing permit 12024 certificate 4141.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Ingles. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to item number 2. I'll read this into the record. For possible action, discussion on the possible adoption of resolution 2020R-041 to approve placing an advisory question on the November 3rd, 2020 ballot to implement a new 0.25% sales and use tax that will be used primarily to finance the preservation of open space within Douglas County and to provide guidance for the clerk treasurer to advertise for members of the pro and con ballot question committees. Mr. Dallaire and Ms. Casey on behalf of the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Chairman Penzel. This is Tom Dallaire, Community Development Director for the record. Let me turn the light on. Maybe that'll help. And we, under NRS Chapter 376A, which authorizes the Board of County Commissioners to adopt an open space plan and to impose certain taxes if the taxes are first approved by a majority of the registered voters of Douglas County, voting on the question at a primary or general special election. NRS 295-230 authorizes the board to ask the advice of the registered voters of Douglas County on any question which the board has under consideration by adoption of a resolution. So at the March 10th joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the board, this was brought up by some members of the Planning Commission, and the board asked the Planning Commission to proceed with coming up with the question and the resolution. At the April 14th Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously passed the Planning Commission Resolution 2020-02, which advised the BOC to ask the advice of the voters on this issue. On May 7th, at the County Commission meeting, you guys reviewed the Planning Commission resolution. You heard a presentation from Ms. Casey, Mr. Nenrip, and also Mr. Echegoyen on this resolution from the advocacy group. And you asked staff to draft a resolution and ballot question. So that resolution is attached to this item as Resolution 2020 R041, which will approve placing the question on the November 3rd ballot to implement the 1/4 of 1% sales tax to use to finance the preservation of open space. And we do have Planning Commission members, Maureen Casey is, I think she's on, as well as Mr. Nenrip, and I saw Jacques Echegoyen on there as well. If you guys have any other questions.
All right. Well, thank you for that presentation. Ms. Casey or Mr. Nenrip, do you have comments that you want to add to that?
Chairman Penzel, certainly. I believe that we definitely support preserving open space, protecting our view sheds, and maintaining our agricultural heritage. And I believe it is time to act now. And I urge you to vote to put this question on the ballot and let the voters decide. But I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, Ms. Casey? We have no audio. Still, we don't have any audio from Ms. Casey. Okay. I'm sorry, Maureen, we couldn't hear you. Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Echegoyen, are you part of this committee? You're muted. You have to unmute.
There you are. Hopefully it's unmuted. I apologize. But Mr. Chairman, I would echo Mr. Neddenrip's comments. And in this dark time, it's a little bit interesting to look at something like this. But I think this community feels as though these open spaces and food producing places are critical for our future.
Okay, thank you. Further comments from board members, questions? Commissioner Engel.
This is a marvelous plan to help maintain the open space areas that we so much enjoy in our county. And especially helps and encourages the ranchers because they have a tough job. And they look at situations that are beyond their control many times in regard to things like inheritance tax and things of this nature. And there's a lot of young cowboys that might be coming into wanting to do ranching, and this will help conserve these open areas and these ranches in this area that we all so much enjoy. I think Mr. Echegoyen is very knowledgeable about this, having worked with some of the other conservancy programs, and it's very viable to bring before the voters. I think we need to do a good PR program in presenting it so that everybody understands what it's for. And Mr. Walsh brought up a good point the last time we discussed this. By using the sales tax, the tourists help to fund it as well. And in keeping with that, I'm supportive of this program.
All right, Commissioner Nelson.
I am also in support of it. However, I have a problem with the word primarily. I don't know if that's 51%, 60%, or what primarily means. I think if you want to get this by the public, that should be exclusively used for this purpose.
Okay, Commissioner Rice.
I would think that in our motion, we can rectify that by taking the word primarily out.
Okay. Mr. Delaire? You're muted.
Yep, sorry, here we go. Sam's got it now. Hey, Maureen Casey sent me some poll information. I guess the Record Courier had ran a poll regarding this topic as well, and the results came back from that. So the poll question was, would you support the quarter-cent sales tax to purchase open space in Carson Valley? And there was 879 total voters. 6%, 55 votes were not sure. 347 votes, or 39%, was no. And we had 477 votes, 54% saying yes. In addition, is my understanding that that Mr. Nedrip and Mr. Echegoyen had another poll done, which states the question is, does it change your opinion of or does it change your opinion of a sales tax increase of 0.25% if you knew 100% of the funds raised through the tax would be used to support the county purchasing of conservation easements from ranchers, farmers to preserve open space, view sheds, tie the water to the land to recharge groundwater, protect the floodplain, expand trails and trailheads. And out of that, in that poll, it was a strongly agree to don't know. And so strongly agree was 35%, approve was 21%, disapprove was 14%, strongly disapprove was 18%, and 12% didn't know. And so I have a slide that we will put on the, that was sent to me, that we just created. It was just in an email format, and we put it on a slide, and we'll put in the supplemental materials after the meeting.
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to echo what Dave and Wes said. I think we remove the word primarily. That would add to the power, I guess, of the motion.
Okay.
And it might, pardon me.
Go ahead, Wes.
And it might remove any doubt in the minds of the people what it's going to be used for. I know in California, they're having a hell of a time because they pass taxes for one thing, and then the governor turns around and diverts it to something else that is in his political agenda. So I think that by changing this to say to be used to finance the preservation, that would remove that doubt.
Good point.
There's one other purpose. I'll get to you in just a sec, Dave. There's one other purpose in doing that, and that is that when we collect it, it goes directly into that account, and it doesn't go to the state. And so we get the money into it. I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that the word primarily should be replaced with exclusively, not just leaving it out.
So I'll add one other one. Absolutely. Okay. So if there are no further comments, is there anybody that's interested in making a motion?
Sure, I will.
Okay.
I move to adopt resolution 2020-R-041 as presented to approve placing an advisory question on the November 3rd, 2020 ballot to implement a new 0.25% sales and use tax that will be used exclusively to finance the preservation of open space within Douglas County and to direct the clerk treasurer to advertise for the members of the pro and con ballot question committees.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, a second by Commissioner Walsh. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays? Motion carries 5-0. I want to thank Mr. Niedenrep and Ms. Casey for their sponsorship and ability to move this through the Planning Commission. And I think it was really proper to get it through the Planning Commission to us. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Don't forget Mr. Echegoyen.
I don't ever forget Mr. Echegoyen. He's been my mentor for a long time. And not only that, but you need to get a tour of the Carson Valley with him because he's an amazing repository of all information here.
It's true.
Thank you, Jock. I appreciate it. Now we'll move on. If there are no further comments, to item number 3. I will read it into the record. Title for possible action. Discussion to approve a $125,000 contract with Wood Rogers for professional planning and engineering services in support of the 2020 Douglas County Master Plan update. Authorize the Community Development Director or County Manager to sign the contract and to modify the terms and the contract price for an amount not to exceed 10% of the original contract amount and approve $137,500 budget transfer from salaries and benefits to services and supplies in the community development budget for fiscal year 2019-20. Mr. Dallaire.
Thank you, Chairman Penzel. Tom Dallaire, Community Development Director. For the record, I have Sam Booth here in the room with me, in the conference room in the Minden Inn. Master Plan amendments update has been going on for quite some time now. This is just a history. Can you see those slides on the? Can you see the slides on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I just don't want to read through the whole thing, but we've been working through the plans up through the end of last year. We've been to a couple of joint meetings with the Planning Commission and the County Commission. December 3rd, we updated the land use maps, approved, finalized after going back and forth with the Planning Commission and the board in February of 2020. March 2010, we held another joint meeting and to get discussing which way to go with the plan and the update now that the maps were complete. And we were trying to get, I believe the County Commission and the Planning Commission both gave us a timeline to get it done by December. After that, on April 20th, a 5-member committee was created in order to put out an RFP or we put out an RFP for a selection of a consultant to help us with the text amendment. What we heard during the community workshops with staff running those, there was some concerns about staff running those committees or running those workshops, and we wanted to get some help in that regard from a consultant. So it was unbiased information that we were going to be collecting. They could make recommendations into the plan. And then on top of that, we lost 2 planners in the department between December and March. And so we are 2 planners down in the department. We were able to get a county engineer on board, and we still have, I think we heard some concerns about where it's not getting it done. We've had a lot of development reviews that Sam's been busy with in the past several months, and going forward with your guys' meetings at the County Commission plus the Planning Commission meetings in the middle of the month. So we did put this committee together, which included myself, Sam Booth, our county engineer, and deputy civil DA, and then we had a Planning Commission chair. Our chairman from the Planning Commission was on there that scored those requests for proposals. We held interviews on the 24th of April with I think it was 5 interviews that we held. Wood Rogers scored the highest and was in the interviews, and after the interviews we scored it, tabulated everything, and then offered Wood Rogers the contract. Well, that's what we're here to do today. But we have been, this process was put on hold because of the amount. We've identified some salary savings from the department that we are wanting to use for this purpose to get this plan done and support staff in getting that accomplished by December. So we do have, just a reminder, we do have the land use maps. They have been updated. The draft plan has been written 2017-18, but needs to be revised. And then, of course, the new data and community input, which was gathered in 2016, needs to be updated and presented in a package. Plus, we're trying to reduce the size of the master plan and get it consolidated down to a document that people can actually use. And currently, our current master plan is the 2011 plan, which has been in use for the past 9 years. So with that, we do have Wood Rogers representative here on the meeting today, that I think they're ready to do a presentation for you guys if Chairman Penzo, if you allow it.
Mr. Durling is from Wood Rogers.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great, thanks so much. For the record, Andy Durling, Vice President with Wood Rogers. Also with me today is Derek Kirkland, who will be the project manager for this effort. Just wanted to give you a little brief overview of our team, as well as our approach to this project and our role in supporting your staff to get this across the finish line. Next slide, Derek. So as I mentioned, I'm Vice President with Wood Rogers. I'm also the Director of Planning for our Nevada offices. I am headquartered in Reno, so I live and work here in Northern Nevada. Derek Kirkland will be our project manager, and he'll be leading the day-to-day. He also is here with me in the Reno office. In addition to our team at Wood Rogers, we also have 2 sub-consultants to help with this effort. The first is Logan Simpson. Logan Simpson is a more nationwide firm. They've got offices across the Western United States and really specialize in these types of master plans. And so we're really excited to have them on the team to give us kind of a national perspective and give you some best practices and things that are seen as being important for master plans, being defensible in master plans in the long run, so that they're really serving your purposes as you implement them. We also have the University of Nevada Center for Economic Development, led by Dr. Fred Steinman. They will be focused on the socio-demographic aspects of the master plan. They have some very proprietary models that they use throughout the state, and really a key asset to what we feel is that demographic section of your master plan. Next slide. Just to give you an idea of our team, as I said, both Derek and I are here in Northern Nevada. We've worked in Douglas County and obviously around Northern Nevada for our entire careers. We have quite a large group in our Reno office. We're the largest private planning group in Northern Nevada, and actually quite a bit larger than a lot of the entities and local jurisdictions around their planning staffs around Northern Nevada as well. So we've got quite a bit of horsepower to give you what you need in a good time frame and with a good budget. We also, as I mentioned, have that national experience from Logan Simpson. They're going to provide some balance and bring experience in really working to streamline plans so that they're very digestible, not just to the implementing people like your in-house staff planners, your planning commission, as well as you on the board, but also for the public at large, that these are easily digestible plans. They also specialize in making digital plans as well. So, creating plans that are both easily read and digested in both a digital and paper format. As I mentioned, the university will bring their proprietary models to help with the socio-demographic aspects. And then we are, like I said, we're Nevadans. We are passionate about preserving our unique communities, especially, with staff members that live in Douglas County. We know that it's an important place for our region. Just to give you a little idea of our experience, as far as the experience in Douglas County, we're currently working for the town of Gardnerville and their Parks Master Plan. We've been doing that for a couple months now. We've also worked in the past with your Parks Department. Primarily, I personally actually did the Parks Master Plan for Johnson Lane Park. And then in years past, some of our engineers worked with you on your pavement management master plan as well. In recent years, we've also worked with the city of Fernley on a very similar scope of work to what is being sought here. Their master plan was updated a couple of years ago, and then we helped them with that, and then we followed up and helped them with a zoning code update in conjunction with that as well. So kind of similar, very similar line of work to what you're looking for with this. And then currently, we're also getting started on the Washoe County Master Plan update, and that's a joint effort with Logan Simpson. So the same team working on that will be working on this, which gives you, kind of a streamlined personal approach to being able to have, these two firms working on a number of different projects together increases the efficiency of our communication internally and things like that. So it's just, overall able to present to you a much more cohesive team. And with that, I will turn it over to Derek, who's going to go through our overall approach to this project.
Good afternoon, Derek Kirkland, Wood Rogers. So I'll be the project manager, as Andy had mentioned, and just to add a little bit on the experiences, we've worked a lot. Douglas County is a great place. We understand the open space and the agriculture and the history. And our firm's worked both in Lake Tahoe, specifically up on the Douglas County side with a lot of complex projects up there, as well as down in the valley. So it kind of gives us that unique approach and understanding of the county and kind of the different demographics and just the different makeup of the county and just how unique it is. So our approach with this, as Andy had mentioned, is really more of a staff augmentation. And we know the important work that you guys have already put into this over the years, that Sam, especially over the last year with some of the mapping and that stuff. And so what we're looking to do is really come on and add some horsepower to Sam's group and kind of help formulate a document that's easy to read and understand. So with that, our first task is the data collection and analysis, and kind of really what we wanted to do is try to streamline that process. The University of Nevada Center for Economic Development's already been doing a lot of work, and we've worked with them on other projects. And so it's a cost-effective, quick way for us to gather this data and kind of work with them. They have a lot of proprietary stuff. We have a great relationship with them, and so we think that they'll be a good fit for this and help us kind of expedite that process. The second task we'll be working on with the public workshops and the meetings, and as unprecedented times over the last few months, we've gotten pretty creative in terms of coming up with ways to get that public outreach and kind of get that public input while we're dealing with some of these new challenges. And so some of that's doing some online polling. We actually have our own polling system online, which we call Wood Polls. Basically helps us gather the information and gives us a really unique way to kind of put it into a report that can go to the boards. And so it's a way to kind of summarize that real quickly. We also have access to interactive online mapping portals. And then obviously there's ways to do some open house meetings, and hopefully, as things start to loosen up a little bit, we can add in some additional stakeholder, kind of some formal presentations, also potentially some workshops, and then working, with Sam's group on board presentations. Our overall approach to the design of the document, again, no need to reinvent the wheel. You guys have done a lot of work, and so we've already started this process with Sam, but really getting in and kind of figuring out what staff wants from us in terms of fixing the document up to make it an easy read. Creating that Chevy plan, not the Cadillac. We're not looking to create this plan that's overkill. We really understand what you guys are looking for in terms of let's get this thing usable. Lots of graphics, pictures worth 1,000 words. Let's use maps, charts, graphs, some different things like that. And we've done that in a lot of plans and helping make it easily understandable for the public. Because if they can understand it, then we've all done our jobs. And then again, just that common vision of working with you guys in terms of what you're looking for in this plan and making sure we're able to message that in the document and help Sam kind of add that horsepower to get this process done. To do that, we're ready to hit the ground running. we're going to be working with Sam over the next few weeks, just getting a brain dump on kind of what's gone on and what we need to do and kind of where we need to focus our efforts. We'll kick the university off on the data collection piece and get that ball rolling. And then really start to dive into the work that's been done and how we can reorganize it and kind of get to that draft master plan, ideally by September. And then that gives us the ability to support Sam and in Douglas County throughout the public approval process following that. And so with that, that concludes our presentation, and we'll be happy to help Sam answer any questions that you guys might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. And there we go. Let's see, we have questions from the board. Commissioner Ingalls.
This is a comment more than a question. At this juncture, $125,000 is a substantial amount of money. And we've tightened up the budget, and it has been everybody's understanding that these next couple of quarters are going to be real important. And before committing this kind of money to this project, I think we should wait. I don't dispute their qualifications or anything like that, but this is money that would be better kept in-house. So right now, I'm of the persuasion that we should wait.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yeah, I agree with John. Also, there's 3 of us that probably will not be on the board next year. And I think that the community, reaching out to the community should be done personal and upfront, up close, which until we go into phase 3 at least, won't be able to happen the way it should happen with the COVID-19. And so I think that trying to rush this through by the end of the year for what purpose, I have no idea, but I don't think it needs to be done that quickly.
Any other comments? Commissioner Rice.
This is something that's been on the back burner for a very long period of time. I know that the time that I've been on the board, we have been trying to get this accomplished. I can see no reason to wait. The money is available. It has been saved from salary savings. And I think that we should move forward and get this project done.
Commissioner Nelson. Oh, next to Commissioner Walsh after Commissioner Nelson.
Yeah, we're going to have a financial update in October. I don't think we should do anything until that point as far as spending this kind of money. We need to know exactly where we are financially before we spend this kind of money. Thank you.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. I'm torn between this. I know that we have to be frugal with our budget, but this is something that's been on the burner for a long time, 4 years, and I think we need to move forward to get it done. I enjoyed the presentation by Wood Rogers. I think they're a qualified company. I think that going forward, we should, if this is approved, we should have a monthly update on their progress. I think that Derek Kirkland should meet with the Planning Commission separately, and then the Board of County Commissioners, and listen to our ideas and thoughts before running off and going in a different direction that we might want. And I wouldn't mind including the commissioner-elects in any of those meetings. But I think for me, I know that we're trying to condense the product, the master plan, but I would like to see some of the ambiguity. Thank you. I have a hard time with that word. out of the master plan. Because, for example, you can take goals and policies and anybody can interpret it 10 or 15 different ways. So I would like to see it a lot clearer and concise so that both the public and the boards have a clear understanding of what is meant by those goals and policies. But I would support this this contract.
Any other comments? All right. Well, if there are no further comments, we're looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve a $125,000 contract with Wood Rogers for professional planning and engineering services in support of the 2020 Douglas County Master Plan update as presented. Authorize the Community Development Director or County Manager to sign the contract and to modify the terms and the contract price for an amount not to exceed 10% of the original contract amount, and approve a budget transfer of $137,500 from salaries and benefits to services and supplies in the community development budget for fiscal year 1920.
I will second that.
So a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Rice. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays?
Nay, this is not the time to do this.
So we have a motion that's carried 3-2. All right. Thank you, Mr. Durling and Mr. Kirkland. Appreciate you participating in this. Moving on.
Thank you very much.
Item 4. For possible action, discussion on an application from Andrew Lucchese to abandon an easement for public roads that is approximately 1,944 square feet in size, located at 638 Ferris Lane in Lake Tahoe, assessor's parcel number 1318-09-810-103, DP 20-0057. Mr. Hutchings, County Engineer.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, Jeremy Hutchings, Douglas County Engineer. I think I can just share my screen real quick. Slowly coming up. Okay. So hopefully you can see my screen here, the aerial view.
Here we go.
Okay. So the project's located on Ferris at up the lake in Marla, Bay GID, just to kind of get you oriented. If I can zoom in, or if it's going to lag too much on me. So the applicant's house is located here. I'm using Google Earth. It has a little bit of better picture of the area. So here's Ferris Lane, and the highway is perched up above. The right of way they're looking to abandon, just a little background, has some parking. The owner has some access down to his house as well, and some patio, and that shows better in this picture. So that kind of gives you an idea of the front of the house, and these improvements are located in the right of way, and including the parking. The street width on Ferris is pretty narrow. It's about 15 feet today. The area he's looking to abandon essentially runs, if we're looking at this picture, kind of along the parking and then back into the house is what he's asking for. Staff, that'd be me, is recommending denial of the petition for a couple of reasons. Here's the area that he specifically would recommending or requesting to be abandoned. As you can see, this dark gold line here is the area. It's about 1,900 plus or minus square feet. This other line type that you see right here, my cursor's kind of dragging around with the little dashes to it, is the edge of pavement. And you can see here that proposed abandonment is actually going to encroach a little bit further onto Ferris Lane, which is already pretty narrow. And granted, this is like a lot of things that in Tahoe in the older days, things, you know, it wasn't built to today's codes, but it's 15 feet wide now, and it actually encroach a little bit into that paved lane and make it a little narrower. The other concerns that I had outlined in my staff report. Well, let me give you a little bit of background. Talking to the neighbors, the parking space was built back by the original owner of Casey's house, the applicant's house. And according to public comment from some of the neighbors, the parking spaces were built pretty much on a handshake deal between Casey and the next door neighbor at the time, that they would share the parking. And you've heard some public comment from, I think, Matt Lawrence, the current owner of the next door neighbor, that if this is granted, all that parking would then become property of the applicant. And so they would lose. Commonly, when I was up there making my site investigation, I think he rents out either all or a portion of the house. One of the tenants was parking there. So it seems like it's just, although it's in public property, it's split between the two sites. So my concerns, had about 3 concerns. If the road, although whether it's likely or not, it's hard to predict the future, but if the road were to be widened, it would potentially, by allowing that dedication to happen, limit the ability to widen it to the lakeside. If the road would need to be repaired for whatever reason, a bit of a slope down there, just under the picture, that could potentially limit the ability to do that without having to go back and either condemn or acquire an easement from the owner. Put that in my notes real quick. And then, and then the public parking, that is split today, day to day, by these 2 owners, though technically I suppose anybody could park there. And if that abandonment were to happen, all those 3 spaces become in property of the applicant. As Mr. Jason Orr had said, Matt Warren, that we did have to find another space to park on an area that's already very limited parking. So with a negative recommendation, I'm not sure if I see the applicant's representative was Kara Teal. I'm sure she's going to want to give a pitch. Let me just make sure. Yeah, those are the 3 concerns I had about approving the dedications. That's why I recommend denial. And I'd like, if the chairman, you'd allow, if Kara is on the call, she did submit a rebuttal letter towards the end of beginning of this week, I guess, in the last week, that I think you all have in your packet. Maybe she would like to get a chance to give her, a presentation from her side of things.
Are you talking about Ms. Thiel?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, you're fading out when you don't talk directly into the mic.
I'm sorry. Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sure if she's on the line, she'd like to give a presentation.
She works for Mr. Feldman. He's here. So
yeah, I can turn off the stop share so they can make a presentation.
Mr. Feldman, did you want to say something about this, or did you want Ms. Thiel?
Mr. Chair, Lou Feldman on behalf of Andrew Casey. I am making the presentation in lieu of Ms. Thiel. And as Jeremy pointed out, this is one of those fairly old subdivisions. It was formed in 1929, basically a summer cabin subdivision. The opportunity to widen roadways there, quite frankly, is, I think, not physically possible. It is going to be a sub-county road requirement subdivision forever. It happens that the Marla Bay GID actually maintains the road, does the snow plowing. The county has absolutely no activity involving this roadway, and, other than the fact that after some fairly arduous tracing, we determined that you are the proud owners of this roadway used and maintained by others. Mr. Lucchese is a senior citizen who is disabled, has owned the property for 20 years. And if you look at some of the photos, and I regret that I don't have the command of the technology to screen share, but we did submit a letter that depicts the improvements in front of Mr. Lucchese's house, which includes a fairly significant retaining component that supports the parking that is directly in front, as well as the patio and the stairs that provide access to his residence. As I'm sure that you have experienced, it was not uncommon in those 1920s and 30s subdivisions to be more casual about improvements, access, roadways, etc. But in this day and age, where seller's disclosure requirements are quite substantial, Mr. Lucchese, after 20 years and a serious heart condition, needs to sell this property. And quite frankly, it is very, very difficult to sell a property where you don't own the improvements that you have constructed that, in good faith, I believe people assumed were part of the actual parcel, and in fact are within the right-of-way. The GID has actually no objection to the abandonment of this property. And there you can see the steps. And to the right of that, there's a retaining wall that supports parking. That retaining wall was constructed by Mr. Lucchese at substantial cost. This would relieve the county of, thank you very much, Jeremy, I appreciate your support here. Would relieve the county of any maintenance obligation. And in fact, Mr. Lauren next door has 2 parking spaces in front. I actually have a photo today depicting 2 cars parked in front of Mr. Lauren's house. He also has access off of the rear roadway, which is Friel Drive, where he has an additional 3 parking spaces in the back. So we certainly don't want to deprive Mr. Lauren of any parking. He has more parking than we have. We believe this is consistent with the development code in terms of abandonment. It reduces county liability and it enables Mr. Lucchese to get on with his life. So we would respectfully disagree with the county engineer's recommendation and respectfully request that you approve the abandonment. Thank you for the opportunity to address the commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Okay, all the presentations are accounted for. Mr. Hutchings, do you have more to add?
I don't.
Okay, then if you would take your screen off, there you go. We'll get back to the board for discussion and action. Any questions from commissioners?
Here.
Go ahead.
Mr. Feldman, by keeping this the way it is, does it really impact anybody negatively?
Well, what it has done is it has made it very, very difficult for Mr. Lucchese to sell this property where he cannot represent that he even owns the improvements that provide access to his house.
I understand that. But it's so, this is a taffy pull between the county and Mr. Lucchese. Is that correct?
Yes.
The big hand of government.
County government. We all, I think, aspire to less government. So we're giving you an opportunity to reduce government and appreciate your support.
Further comments? Commissioner Rice.
Mr. Chairman, at first blush, when I looked at this, I was not in favor of it at all. But I have received comments from the GID, the Marla Bay GID, requesting that we approve the abandonment. I went to the location and I took a look at it, and I can understand why the petitioner wants to have this abandoned. The argument from the GID is that Douglas County has done nothing since this was originally built, that we do not maintain the road. We do not do any work on the road. We do not do any snow removal. We do not do anything in there. And so I am now inclined to think that we ought to approve this so that the county has nothing to do with this property at all.
All right, Commissioner Walsh, you raised your hand.
I did, thank you. I too drove the subdivision the other day. It's a very old subdivision, as Mr. Feldman mentioned. Very, very narrow streets throughout the subdivision. I saw a real estate sign, and it was a listing right down the street on Ferris Drive. I called Miss Amanda Kendall, I believe. She's the realtor, and she also lives in Marla Bay. And she said it's a problem all the way up and down the street. And she said the feeling in the neighborhood is that all the properties who are on Ferris Drive and who are partly their parking or whatever is partly in the right of way, all of the properties up and down that street should be abandoned by the county. We should abandon the right of way. I don't know Mr. Lucchese, but I stopped at the house and I saw the dilemma he's in. He's got this cloud on his title, not really, but it's a cloud. He can't disclose, or he can't truthfully disclose that he has access to his front door. So I tend to agree with the abandonment as presented. Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yeah, Mr. Hutchins, you mentioned that at some point in the future, the county may need to reacquire this property. Can you go into a little more information about that and what you think the odds would be that might happen?
Well, thanks for the question, Mr. Nelson. Yeah, if the road were to be widened and you've abandoned the right of way that you now own up to that actually encroaches into the existing traveled way, and you needed to go back in to widen the road or repair it if it were to fail, you need to acquire some sort of easement or right of way back from that owner for property that you currently own. So it's a bit of a crystal ball looking at it. Your guess is as good as mine, I suppose, to look into the future. So I don't know if I could put any specific odds to that. Probably, maybe that's not helpful. So maybe I need to be more helpful. I'd say, given the fact that the subdivision is extremely old and a lot of the infrastructure is already in place, the odds would probably be low, but it's certainly not impossible. Roads do fail, and this is on some pretty significant slopes.
Would it be possible to give up maybe half of this, leaving room to widen the road if we needed to?
Giving up half the right of way that he's requested, I don't think would help him from the sales point of view if he's looking to accomplish this for parking, because he'd still only have half of the parking. That's what you're asking.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Hutchings, when you mention in the future it'd have to be widened, how can you widen it? You go over to the NDOT right away, or you go into his property more? It doesn't seem like you could ever really widen it to the county road width.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Thanks to Mr. Feldman's research there, the old highway was supposed to be built a little bit further down the hill back, like I think in the 20s, maybe, Lou, maybe you remember off the top of your head, but it actually got built further up the hill. And then Lou's firm discovered the documents that the NDOT doesn't claim any interest to it, kind of outside the retaining wall that supports the highway now, generally. So it's really county property outside of where those physical improvements are. And the right-of-way extends down close into the applicant's, kind of where he has his patio and such. That's actually how wide it is today. So if he had to widen the road, you wouldn't need to acquire really any right of way today. If you relinquish the right of way that you have and you wanted to widen it on the lakeside or repair, that's where you'd be jammed up a bit. Potentially, there is a little bit of space on the uphill side to be a little more of a slope to contend with, but you could widen on that side as well. It's a possibility. It's certainly not a certainty. Does that answer your question, Commissioner? Chairman?
Kind of. That's not a good alternative. And, you know, taking away parking spaces up there where it's so tight is also not a good solution.
Right, and it's used by multiple owners. It's not just used by, well, and when I was there on my site visit, I mentioned that one of the tenants next door was parking in that space, as was, well, actually the other two spaces were vacant at the time, but I'm sure Mr. Ricassi parks there regularly.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Ingalls?
No.
Good question. Seeing no other questions, I guess we're ready for a motion. Who would like to make a motion?
Well, let's see, I'll try this. I move to approve the petition to abandon a portion of the existing right-of-way along Ferris Lane as proposed under DP 20-0057 for reasons we just talked about amongst ourselves and period.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Ingalls. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Leave the guy alone. Aye.
Okay, so the motion carries 5-0. All right, we're pulling we're pulling item number 5. Is that correct? Mr. Cates?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And now we're on to item number 6, and I'll read that into the record for possible action. Discussion to adopt resolution 2020R-058 approving an increase in fiscal year 2019-20 budgets of the general fund by $2,431,882, the county construction fund by $40,000, and the motor pool vehicle maintenance funds by $256,838 for a total increase of $2,728,770. Ms. Willoughby.
Thank you, Chairman. Terry Willoughby for the record. These are the final budget augments for fiscal year 1920, and I'm going to go through the first two smaller items first. The capital project fund is to add funding because a transfer was received from the town of Minden related to a capital project. So we're just augmenting that to match the actual receipt and expenditures. On the internal service fund, that is carryover purchase orders from the prior year. And the general fund, my department has been reviewing the restricted funds throughout the year and gone through a comprehensive audit of those funds. These are court funds and other technology fees that can only be used for certain purposes, and they're never included as part of the actual budget. But we went through and tracked the receipt and expenditure for several years, and the primary part of the general fund augment is to recognize these revenues and bring the balances in the budget to their true amounts. So of the 2.7 million in the general fund, 2 million of that is restricted funds. The other balance is carryovers from prior year, fiscal year 18-19. So I'd be happy to take any questions on that. It's really a cleanup of, we've spent several months reviewing these restricted funds.
Questions? Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, Terry, I was just making sure this is actually augmenting the 2019-2020 budget, not next year's. Is that correct?
Not next year's, no.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And we are exploring, we're working with our auditors to see if there's a better way to account for these restricted funds rather than having them in the general fund. We don't include them in the operating fund budget, but we're going to be exploring some different accounting methods for these going forward.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
Other questions? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that we adopt resolution 2020R-058 as presented.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, a second by Commissioner Walsh. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays, the motion carries.
You're up, Jeannie.
Take a 10-minute break at this point. We'll be back.
We're gonna-
Second. We'll be back just before 3 o'clock. How's that? to go? Everybody okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well then, let's go ahead and reconvene and let the record reflect that 2:56, all the commissioners are back. And we'll move on to item number 7. And let me read it into the record. As soon as I get my glasses. For possible action, discussion to appoint ballot committee members to prepare arguments advocating for and opposing approval of 2020 county referendum question, shall ordinance 2016-1456, adopting the Douglas County redevelopment plan for redevelopment area number 2 located generally in the state line area of Douglas County be approved and remain in place. Ms. Lewis.
Thank you, commissioners. For the record, Kathy Lewis. This agenda item I think will be pretty easy. It's to appoint the committees to prepare arguments that will go on the sample ballot and on our website for the arguments supporting the question and arguments supporting voting against the question. So we had 6 people submit interest applications for this. Earlier today, Mr. Starrett removed his application or withdrew his application. I know the other 5 are on the meeting. I saw their names. So we had 2, Mr. Feldman and Mr. Teixeira, who have volunteered or submitted their interest to write arguments in favor of the ballot question. And then 3 people, Mrs. Starrett, Mr. Maxwell, and Mrs. Suzaru, see if I can speak, have submitted interest applications to write the arguments against the ballot question. And so this is before you is to formally appoint them, and then they will write the questions that will go with the ballot. If you have any questions, I'm here to help.
Okay. We'll take, since there are 2 separate motions in this, we'll take the for group first and then the against group after that. All right. So we have 2 for it. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll go, we'll take that as a separate motion. Any individuals?
Are you ready for a motion on the first half of it?
Yeah.
Okay, I move to appoint Lou Feldman and Steve Teixeira to serve on the committees to prepare arguments advocating for the approval of the 2020 county referendum question on redevelopment area 2.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by Commissioner Walsh. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Motion carries.
Thank you.
5-0. All right, now we go to the second half of this, the against. Any comments or questions by the commissioners?
Who was the third one? I have Starrett, Suzaru, and who's the other one?
Dave Maxwell.
Mr. Maxwell, Dave
Thank
Maxwell.
you.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Walsh. I just question, I know this has been a very emotional issue, but Starrett, Maxwell, and Suzaru have really been nasty throughout this whole issue, and I question their objectivity. And I know they're against it, but I don't know. I'm not sure I'm for them.
Okay, I see you smiling, Ms. Suzaru. Did you want to make a comment, Mr. Nelson?
You want to make your, I find that kind of objection. I object to that comment personally. I don't think that it is an emotional thing, but to call out certain people that you don't think should be on this, I think is totally out of place.
Mr. Walsh?
I didn't call them out. They were the only three that applied.
And it does take a vote. I find it interesting that at the beginning and end of most of the meetings, these individuals will call us out individually. And then they come and ask for us to vote for them at this point in time. I find that hard to do. And in fact, I find it so hard to do that I am going to abstain. I am not going to take a position on them at this point in time.
Chairman?
Commissioner Ingalls.
In this matter, there are two diametrically opposed opinions. And everybody has agreed to have the advocates, Mr. Feldman and Mr. Teixeira, be advocates for the RDA2. And then you've got another group who are opposed to it. So that's the way it is. And what's wrong with that? They present their side of the views and present it to the public. And the public's going to be the ultimate decider, not us.
True, true. What's different is that the other half, the opposing half, and I have no problem with them being opposing, but they started from the day one to make it personal. Mr. Feldman and Mr. Teixeira have not. They've tried to keep it.
Feldman, if I may, you committed assault and battery on me. You made it real personal.
You're out of order.
You know, you keep pushing that. You should review what the district attorney said. And
I'm not going to get into it. Look.
Apparently you are. You brought it up.
Well, you were the one who started it.
Oh,
and
okay.
You started it from the beginning. I never did anything to you.
I don't want to get into that.
Now you're taking a position that, well, I don't like what the other side is, and I don't like those people, so I'm not even going to vote on it. I'm not going to let the public decide.
I didn't say that. I just said that I think it's odd that they would personally attack me and then ask me for their vote. And I don't want to tick anybody off, so I'm just going to not vote. Mr. Starrett claimed in his application that we were hostile. I'm not hostile. I'm just listening.
Oh, I beg to differ.
Okay.
So do I. You guys have been hostile against this all along, and just to make it sound like it's just these people that are hostile, you guys are just not being fair to everyone. This is not being fair.
Oh, I guess that's your choice to make that term.
Chairman?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have not been hostile at all during this whole process. Okay, and Dave, you're shaking your head. I have not been hostile at all. I've listened to the facts. Okay, you people came, I shouldn't say you people. The three people that we're talking about right now came to the board meetings and were definitely hostile towards the three of us. That's hostility.
I'd like to go on the record to remind the chairman that after you attacked me, I had to go to the hospital. Then 2 days later, you filed a restraining order against me. And a couple more days later, I wound up in the hospital with an infected arm, a temperature of 105. I was in there for 4 days over Memorial Day weekend. I get out and then you vacate the restraining order. What you subjected my family to is unconscionable. I would never do that to anybody, but you did it to me.
I'm not going to debate that here. That's not under consideration.
Well, it certainly is, because stand up and vote these people in and let's let the citizens decide.
They can decide. I'm not preventing that. Commissioner Nelson.
I guess I'll have to remind Commissioner Walsh that at the time of this incident, he was not in the room when the incident happened, but when he entered the room, he immediately accused John Ingalls of being the aggressor. And I think that shows some animosity toward the people that are against RDA 2. It was definitely not called for.
We're not here to retry that. We're here to decide whether or not.
Yes, we're not here to retry that, but you're using these people that have been against this as being pawns here and not allowing them to write the opposition. That's where you're headed.
I am not preventing that. I'm not preventing that. We haven't called for a vote. There's
You
simply
already have one
carry
person.
the day.
You're withdrawing.
So make a motion.
Okay, I move to appoint the following. Virginia Sterrett, David Maxwell, Ginny Shizuru, to serve on the committee to prepare arguments opposing approval of the 2020 county referendum question on redevelopment area number 2.
Second.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, a second by Commissioner Ingalls. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays?
Hey,
There's one nay, and I'm abstaining. So it passes 3-1-1. Okay?
That's 3-1, right?
3-1-1. I abstained.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Ritchie, is that clear?
Thank you, Chairman Doug Ritchie with the District Attorney's Office. Yes, the motion was brought forwarded, properly seconded, and passed.
All right. So we'll move on to item number 8. Is that satisfactory, Ms. Lewis?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Number 8. For possible action, discussion to decline appointment of ballot committee members to prepare arguments and advocating for and opposing the 2020 county advisory question. Shall Douglas County be authorized to levy an additional tax upon special fuel that includes diesel fuel sold within the county in the amount of 5 cents per gallon for the sole and exclusive purpose of paying for the repair, maintenance, and construction of public roads? Ms. Lewis.
Thank you. I do think that this one will be easier. This one, for this committee, we only had one person express interest, Mr. Sterrett. And again, like I said, he did withdraw his application. But even if he did keep his application, by law, the board, you guys need to appoint at least one for arguing in favor and one for arguing against. And I did not have interest for anybody who wants to argue in favor of it, and only one against that withdrew. So because that we don't have the interest to be able to form the committees, I'm asking for a formal vote to decline to appoint committees, and then the district attorney's office, in consultation with our office, the clerk's office, will write those arguments for the ballot.
All right. Discussion by the board?
No.
Any board members want to discuss? Put somebody on the board or on the committees, either of the committees? Seeing that, then we'll look for a motion here.
Mr. Chair, I move to decline to appoint ballot committee members to prepare arguments advocating for and opposing approval of the 2020 county advisory question on adding a tax on diesel fuel due to the inability to appoint at least one person to both committees, and allowing the Douglas County clerk to prepare the arguments for the advisory question as required by NRS 295-121.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Nelson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? And the ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, and now we'll go to item number 9. For possible action, discussion to approve the settlement and release of Douglas County's insurance claim with the public agency insurance pool arising out of the employee theft of tires 2016-2017 pool claim number P243-05078-01 for an insurance payment of $215,000. Mr. Wadley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick presentation on the background of this item. In April 2017, the county submitted an insurance claim to its insurer, the public agency insurance pool, commonly referred to as pool, arising out of the prior employee theft of tires by former Douglas County Superintendent of Maintenance and Operations, Chris Oakton. That particular claim was subject to a $500,000 recovery limit under the terms of the county's insurance policy. The policy also stated that coverage was canceled immediately when Douglas County management employees either knew or reasonably should have known of the theft under the circumstances. After submission of the claim, the county's claim was initially denied by Pool on 2 primary bases. One, Pool took the position the county could not conclusively demonstrate that all of the tires missing from inventory were necessarily stolen by an employee. And 2, that at some point in time, county management either knew or had reason to know of the theft before the claim date and failed to stop it. On behalf of the county and the DA's office, I traded several rounds of correspondence with Pool, arguing for coverage of the claim. All of that correspondence is part of your packet. And as part of this process, Pool was provided with investigation reports from the Douglas County Grand Jury and a separate criminal investigation at the state level by the Department of Investigations. Some of the findings and statements in these investigation reports complicated the county's efforts to obtain insurance coverage for this claim, and they were cited by Pool in their coverage denial positions. And admittedly, in looking back, there were mistakes that were made at the county level in connection with this matter. And we had to do our best to overcome those issues and hurdles in our insurance coverage negotiations with Pool. Pool ultimately, at the end of this process, offered partial coverage of the claim in the amount of $88,258, which represented the estimated amount of losses from the theft through fiscal year 2012-2013. The county did not accept this offer and asked Pool to mediate the matter in hopes of reaching an amicable agreement between the parties. That mediation occurred on May 22nd, 2020, and it culminated in an offer from Pool of the $215,000 referenced in this agenda item in settlement of the county's insurance claim. The recommendation of the board is to move forward and accept this settlement offer from Pool. Obviously, it's not full compensation for the loss or full recovery under the policy limit, but it represents a reasonable recovery under the language of the policy and the particular circumstances of this case, in my opinion. And it ultimately allows for the county to move forward from this unfortunate incident and put it behind us. So that's the extent of my presentation, Mr. Chair. If you have questions among the board, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Question, Commissioner Walsh?
Yes, I just want to make a comment. I think that County Manager and Mr. Wadley did an exceptional job in negotiating this settlement with Pool. This has been a long time coming, and I hope we can put this tire gate issue behind us. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments?
Ingalls.
Go ahead, Mr. Ingalls.
I'd agree with Commissioner Walsh. And I think we're lucky to get this money because from the standpoint and the position of the insurance company, they're saying, you are such a bunch of fools, you deserve to lose that money. And we're lucky to get that. Thank you.
All right. Other comments? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Walsh.
Some further comment. I move to approve the settlement and release of the Douglas County's insurance claim with the Public Agency Insurance Pool, pool claim number P243-17-05078-01, close parentheses, as presented, and authorize the county manager to sign all necessary insurance claim settlement and release documents.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Walsh and a second by Commissioner Nelson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on. Item number 10, for possible action. Discussion to approve a proposed settlement and release agreement between Douglas County and Keith D. Story and Elizabeth A. Story as trustees of the 1201 AM Trust related to case number 2020-CV-00001, a petition for judicial review of the adoption of ordinance 2019-1556-A. Mr. Ritchie. Hello?
Thank you, Chairman Penzel and Commissioners. Doug Ritchie with the District Attorney's Office. I've been working with Community Development, Mr. Dallaire and Sam Booth, to address some of the concerns raised by Mr. and Mrs. Story regarding potential development in their neighborhood along Orchard. It deals with the potential future construction of Muller Parkway. I did want to clarify that the county is not paying any settlement to them. They're not sure if they want to rezone their property, but if they do, the county has agreed to waive the application fee. I will say that this will resolve this litigation, as well as make it possible for the Clobber Ranch petition for judicial review that is currently pending to also be settled. Because as the board may recall, the board denied the development application for the Clobber Ranch development. And this agreement will require any transferable development rights to come from Clobber onto into the park area. So this will help facilitate not only the resolution of this lawsuit, but also potentially the Clobber Ranch litigation. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? No questions? If there are no questions, we'll be looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the settlement and release agreement between Douglas County and Keith D. Story and Elizabeth A. Story as trustees of the 1201 AM Trust as presented.
I will second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Walsh, a second by Commissioner Rice. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? No nays. The motion carries 5-0. Now we'll move on to item number 11. This is title for possible action. Discussion to designate $300,000 in salary savings in the general fund from fiscal year 2019-20 for a community development permitting and efficiency project. This project will be used to enhance customer service and improve economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of the development review and permitting process within Douglas County's jurisdiction as recommended in a draft development and permitting efficiency review report prepared by Moss Adams LLP, Douglas County's internal auditor. Ms. Davison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Jennifer Davidson, Assistant County Manager for the record. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of this request this afternoon. As a reminder, the board did previously appoint Moss Adams LLP as the internal auditor for Douglas County. The internal auditor for Douglas County does work in partnership with the audit committee on the previously approved 2019-2020 work plan. On that work plan was this efficiency and permitting review study that is contained, a draft of which is contained in your packet today. This request comes to you a little bit out of order. We're going to have a conversation, I suspect, about which comes first. the permitting process and review study, or the funding to support any such changes in our processes and recommendations that we may have as a result of the findings from the study. Unfortunately, I'm bringing the funding request forward to you today without the final report being adopted or even having been reviewed by the audit committee. I think that's an important step in this process that still needs to happen, and I am pleased to report it will be happening in the near future. However, because we are quickly approaching the end of this fiscal year, it is important for us to consider whether or not we would like to obligate funding, designate funding for the purposes of addressing the issues identified in the report. That is the intent of this request today. We did indicate that we would like to see $300,000 in funding for this purpose. We anticipate that not all of the dollars that would be designated for this study would be used for efficiency creation in community development. And we do not have an exact plan or timeline to address the findings in that report. We would just merely like to designate that funding in a project reserve for future board discretion and future audit committee discretion as projects are specifically identified as suggested in the study. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have today.
Questions from the board? Commissioner Ingalls, then Commissioner Nelson, and then Commissioner Walsh. Go ahead, Commissioner Ingalls.
We've been working diligently to scrub the budget in anticipation of severe shortfalls because of the economic situation that we're currently facing. Hence, this money shouldn't be spent at this time. This is like the second item with a substantial amount of an expenditure at a time when we're all talking one way and doing something else. The second thing is, Moss Adams, they're financial auditors. They do financial audits and procedural audits for finance. I don't know why we're having them get involved in the planning operation. And we all know that Title 20 is a mess, and it makes it more difficult for the planning department, and the whole thing requires a revamp. So this to me is some kind of piecemeal thing that has come up, and I don't know why it's come up now, but here it is, and I'm opposed to it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, I guess my statement is a little different. This is an audit, and I think any auditing company that makes a political statement in their auditing statements is totally out of place. And I've always liked Moss Adams, but from now on, I will not be doing anything to ask them to do any audits for us any further, because I think their political statements in this are totally unprofessional.
Thank you, sir.
486.
Commissioner Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't necessarily disagree with Commissioner Ingalls about the funding. Is the funding going to be spent over a period of time? Is it we're just setting aside something from the fiscal 1920 budget for future use? Is that what we're trying to do? Ms. Davidson?
Thank you, Commissioner Walsh, for your question. Yes, that would be our intent, and the purpose for bringing forward the request at this time would be to set aside funding from the current fiscal year, potential savings that we have identified in the current fiscal year for this purpose. We have no specific projects in mind or a timeline for those projects, as I mentioned. We would need to bring forward those specific timelines for additional board approval. And I suspect many of those projects would come forward as part of a discussion between community development and the audit committee to address the findings contained in the report.
Thank you. I think this is long overdue, this exercise. Over the years, I've received numerous complaints from individuals saying that the process is flawed, that it's cumbersome, that it's not cohesive. So I would be happy to support the effort to enhance customer service for our residents. But as far as the comments about Moss Adams is, I think, the 15th largest CPA firm in the country, the largest in the West. I don't think they make political statements. I think what they do is that, well, Dave, you're laughing. I think what they do is they give us the facts. They're obligated to give us the facts. And they went in and they talked to the various stakeholders. And this is what they learned. They learned that there's a culture of anti-growth in the county. So they made that statement. They also made a statement that says that a growing body of economic literature suggests that this type of anti-development sentiment, anti-growth sentiment, is a major factor in creating a stagnant economy, resulting in the long-term decline of a community. Don't you think that our community needs to know that?
Commissioner Rice and then Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have commented on more than one occasion to our county manager that our permitting process is flawed. I held up Story County as an example of what can be done. And I believe that this will help our county streamline the process, make things less cumbersome and less expensive. And I, for one, have complete faith in Ms. Davidson. And if she says that this is something that's needed and that she is advocating for the salary savings to be put in the general fund, then I'm for the process. Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yeah, I hate to disagree with Commissioner Walsh, but this statement, this last paragraph on this page is totally out of place here. Evidently, they didn't know that SGI passed. That is not a small group of people. That was a majority of the people in Douglas County. And this past election definitely showed that it's not a small group that is against the overdevelopment of Douglas County. I would also remind the people that in Jim Slade's statement that he made, he points out a book that's just recently come out called Better, Not Bigger. And I think that's showing that growth is not necessarily needed to have a vibrant economy. And those are the things that we need to look to find out how to keep Douglas County rural. And this statement is totally opposed to that. And so I find this to be really a very poor statement by an accounting firm, personally.
Further comments? I'll toss in my 2 cents.
Jennifer wants to say something. She's muted.
Go ahead. What did you say?
Jennifer's muted. She wants to say something. There she goes.
Jennifer. Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do just want to point out that approval of this request today is not acceptance of the report or the language contained in the report. There will be an opportunity for the audit committee to give recommendations to the commission regarding this report, and this report will come back to the commission for additional consideration and possible acceptance at that time. It is certainly the discretion of this board to have any language stricken from the report if it were to come back to you. Merely, this is just your opportunity to consider funding so that we can address many of the issues that were identified in this audit. I can tell you from my time in Douglas County, even my time before I came to Douglas County as Minden Town Manager, many of the processes and procedures that are adopted upstairs have been questioned over time. There is definitely a need to create efficiency within that department, and that cannot be done. Good progress cannot be made without funding. And this is in furtherance of the mission and goals that our county manager has put in place. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would like to defer some time to him because I do know he wanted to speak to those points.
Mr. Cates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few points that I'd like to make. First of all, the scope of work for this is an efficiency study. Moss Adams isn't our financial auditor. They are our internal auditor, and doing efficiency studies is definitely within their scope of work. This was approved as part of their work plan for the current fiscal year by the audit committee. I actually suggested early on that this be taken to the audit committee as part of their scope of work, because I'm well aware of some of the problems that we have with community development and their processes. I'm very committed to making process improvements in this county, and I saw this as an excellent opportunity to do so. So much so that I recently realigned the duties of Assistant County Manager Jennifer Davidson and put her in charge of community development and public works, primarily to work on this audit and to find other efficiencies in those programs. We know that we will need to make some system changes in order to improve those efficiencies. There's a lot of paper processes and things that can be solved by automation, although we don't know exactly what that's going to look like until we go through this process improvement review with the assistant county manager. We know we will need to make those changes. And I saw this as an opportunity where we had some salary savings that we could identify some funding to put into a project so that we could tackle those implementations. And that would be done over time, working with the audit committee and bringing the results back to the board. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Well, if there are no further comments, do we have a motion? A no motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Rice.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we designate $300,000 in salary savings in the general fund for fiscal year 2019-2020 for a community development permitting and efficiency project as permitted.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Rice, a second by Commissioner Walsh. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against say nay. I only heard one nay. Did both Commissioner Nelson and Commissioner Ingalls say nay?
No,
I'm sorry?
no, I said aye.
Aye, okay, so motion carries 4-1. So we'll move on to the next item. And the next item should be item 12, which is the county manager. And I'll read this one into the record. For possible action, discussion and evaluation of the performance of County Manager Patrick Cates, the adoption of priorities, goals, and expectations for the county manager, and the granting of a merit increase between 0 and 3% in accordance with a contract between Douglas County and Patrick Cates. Ms. Lang.
Thank you very much, Chairman Penzel, members of the commission, Wendy Lang for the record, Human Resources. I am here today to present with you the opportunity to review the performance of Mr. Cates during his first year as Douglas County Manager. I have properly noticed Mr. Cates in accordance with NRS that his character may be discussed today. I've attached to this agenda item a full copy of the executed contract between Douglas County and Mr. Cates, which has specific language regarding the annual performance and the alignment of a potential merit increase with Douglas County policy. And I've attached that policy for your reference as well. And with that, I would hand it over to Mr. Cates, as I know he has some information to share with regard to accomplishments and suggestions of goals. And I'll be available if there are any questions related to the process. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Lang. And in the past, I would note that the service of this and the acknowledgement by Mr. Cates has also been included in our packet, but that's been done. So he's been properly noticed. And with that, I'll open it up for questions, comments. ideas. Mr. Cates, do you want to say anything?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me just address the issue of merit increase. I was hired by the county based on a salary range, much like other county positions, and I was hired at the mid-range. Like other county employees, my contract includes language where I could be considered for up to a 3% pay raise, a merit increase based on review. I would ask the board not to consider that today. I think in light of the fiscal situation at the county, I don't really feel right seeking that, but I do look forward to getting feedback from the board on my performance, how I can improve that, and I'm particularly interested in discussing goal setting, particularly for the next 6 months while we have the current board in place, so that I can make sure that I'm as effective as possible as meeting the needs of the board. So I wanted to get that out of the way. I did include a memorandum, a report to the board that discusses some accomplishments. If you would indulge me, I'd like to review that briefly.
Indulge.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I just want to say it's been a real privilege to serve Douglas County over the last 15 months. I know this performance review should have come forward in March. I think in light of the emergency brought about by COVID-19 and a lot of scrambling we had to do, we didn't bring this forward probably as soon as we should have, but I'm glad we have it here today. A few things that I want to highlight that I think we've been able to achieve during my tenure. I think first and foremost, I had to start out by building relationships. I spent a lot of time with, and continue to spend a lot of time with the management team. I'm very, very pleased overall with our team, and I think we all work well together. I've worked hard to forge relationships with all the commissioners, which at times, frankly, has been a little challenged because of some of the contentious issues that the board has had to deal with. But I think by and large, I think I've developed a rapport with every commissioner, and I feel like I have a good relationship with each one of you, despite some of those policy issues that are difficult to deal with. I certainly have also worked hard to forge good relationships with the elected officials, and I feel very confident in those relations. I've spent and continue to spend a lot of time with external stakeholders, going to meetings, meeting with people, members of the public, stakeholder groups such as the visitors authorities, business council, a lot of time spent forging those relationships. Some of the things related to human resources, I would say one of the things that I think is important to me personally is I came out of the gate pretty strong, establishing an expectation of ethical conduct for county employees. And let me just say, I think by and large, county employees do conduct themselves ethically. But in light of Tiregate and some history at the county, I thought it was really important to set the right tone. I started that by writing a letter in our newsletter that really talked about being good stewards of the public trust. I have continued to reinforce that with my management team, and I've certainly reinforced that in our dealings on HR matters. And I certainly don't let any conduct that may not be appropriate to go unaddressed. I'm very vigilant about that, and I think I've tried really hard to spread the message to employees that they need to speak up. There were some good tools put in place before I got here with the Lighthouse Fraud, Waste, and Abuse Hotline, and I very much actively monitor that and follow up on issues that come through there. Another area I've emphasized is timely and thoughtful employee evaluations. I know I've rejected evaluations because I didn't think they were thorough or well documented, and I'm always on my management team to make sure those are timely. Another thing that's been important to me is training. The county had some decent training programs, but we've been able to expand that. Primarily, we've expanded to NeoGov Learn, where we have rolled out a whole suite of trainings for personnel. I think it's very important to keep our workforce trained. There's a lot more that I'd like to do there in the future. In the area of finance, as you know, Terry Willoughby has been a tremendous asset to the county. I worked very closely with her. She reports directly to me. As you may recall, my background is in finance, 20 plus years in the state. And so I came with a lot of ideas about how we could budget better and manage our finances better. One of the things that I did was push to use base year actuals as a starting point for budgeting. It gives you some framework for where expenditures are actually going. Prior to my arrival, the county was basically copying over the same budget year after year without any reference to real expenditures, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I've also pushed to improve budgeting for revenues so that we're realistically estimating our revenues so that that can be accounted for, so that the board can make informed decisions about how to allocate our resources. Community development, I oversaw the master plan map update. That was part of the major 20-year update to the county master plan. And I know some of that was contentious, but I think it was a much needed update to the county's master plan, and it will serve us well in the future as we continue to make updates to the master plan. Moeller Parkway, we were able to secure the right-of-way for a majority section of the future Moeller Parkway through the Park Ranch property. Again, I know that's a point of contention, but Moeller Parkway has been a strategic goal for this board for quite some time. And I'm pleased that we were able to move that ball forward significantly. In terms of economic vitality, again, I know this is another one that is somewhat contentious, is definitely contentious. But we were able to make the findings and enter into a funding agreement with the Tahoe Douglas Visitors Authority to construct the Tahoe South Event Center. As I said, regardless of what individual commissioners may think of that project, it is a long-standing strategic goal of the board and part of their strategic plan. And I'm pleased that we were able to move that ball forward as well. In the area of public works, returning again to Moeller Parkway, we were able to submit the 2020 US DOT build grant application to construct 4 lanes of Moeller Parkway from US 395 south of Gardnerville to US 395 north of Minden. I think we put together a very competitive grant, and it is competitive, as I said, to get an award from a build grant, but I think we have positioned ourselves as good as we possibly could. And if that is awarded, it will provide funding to get another strategic priority of the board that has been outstanding for a number of years. Another accomplishment is the consolidation of the utility water rates. That's been a long time in coming. That was well underway before I got here, so I don't want to take too much credit for that, but it was a big achievement that occurred on my watch. I want to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 response. That's been a tremendous amount of work. Worked very closely with our emergency manager, our community partners, and our departments. I oversaw the closure of offices after the declaration of emergency, as well as the current reopening that we've been going through right now. This has included the deployment of personal protective equipment and other measures to protect employees and the public. We initiated telecommuting as an alternative work arrangement. We were able to keep most of our employees productive, even though our offices were closed. We established the use of Zoom as a platform to allow continued public meetings in compliance with the state directives regarding the open meeting law that prevented us from having the public present at public meetings. I also developed a COVID-19 financial response plan to ensure the county's financial position remains strong in the face of anticipated revenue declines. I was also pretty proud of the letter that I drafted for the board to take to the governor to request that rural counties be on their own timeline to reopen their economies separate from the urban areas of Reno and Las Vegas. I also worked hard with business partners to develop a framework for reopening of Douglas County. Thankfully, the state, after that, began to take some action, and some of the measures that we were considering were not needed because the state, well, frankly, finally got their act together. I like to think that that letter and the pressure that this board put on the state had a lot to do with the state moving that forward. If I could turn to the goals through the current calendar year with the current board, some of the things that I'm hoping to achieve within the next 6 months. We want to develop training and orientation for new commissioners. We already have some of that in place, but I want to make sure that's expanded, and I'm eager to engage with the new commissioners before they take their seats so that they can be as prepared as they can to assume their duties. We are in discussions with Pool PAC to expand risk management training for employees. I think it's really important that employees understand and recognize things like waste, fraud, and abuse, and how to take action. Another thing that I'm interested in doing is expanding ethics training. So we do provide ethics training for all employees, but it is, I would say, an overview from the Ethics Commission that we provide for them. And what we're working on right now is to institutionalize that so that every year department heads are having conversations with their employees, and that's part of their training, where they talk about how ethics applies to them personally in their jobs and work through scenarios of when those things come up and how to deal with them. I think that's really important because I think a lot of people go through the Ethics Commission training and think, oh, that doesn't apply to me. And I know just in some casual conversations, I'm sometimes very surprised that people don't necessarily connect the dots there. And I think that's critical for this organization. I'm also eager to develop some budget monitoring training for directors and managers. Our New World system, there aren't a lot of training, and I think some managers that have been around for a while know how to use those tools. Many do not, and I think that's very important. I think the lack of budget monitoring, that's not just the job of fiscal, that's the job of all managers. And I think employees need to know how to do that. The managers need to know how to do that in a systematic manner. I am convinced the Tiregate would not have happened if managers were doing that as part of their regular duties. And again, it's not just finance. It certainly is finance it is certainly finance's role, but it is all departments' roles. In the area of finance, we're going to continue to closely monitor revenue for further budget adjustments due to COVID-19. That's very important. We will continue to update financial policies and procedures. I know the audit committee will be looking at an update to our purchasing procedures. That work will continue. We also have numerous audit findings that we need to work on to make sure the county's funds are accounted for properly and are overseen properly. The master plan text amendment update, we need to complete that. The board just took action on that to get a contractor on to make sure that we can get this done this year. We need to complete the sewer rate restructure. That's been in the works, and we need to bring that forward to the board soon as well. I'm also interested in initiating a Carson Valley Aquifer study. We've been in conversations with USGS on scopes of work. Once that is finalized, I'm going to reach out to the other GIDs and see if we can cobble together some funding to get that important work done. And also reviewing the latest grand jury report. That will be going to the Internal Audit Committee later this month. I want to work with the board and the audit committee on resolution of their recommendations. I think that is incredibly important and needs to get done within the next 6 months. Long-term goals, a lot of things that I'd like to accomplish. So after January, when the new board is seated, I think we need to return to strategic planning with the new board. Strategic planning is one thing that I felt like I hadn't been able to get to the degree I wanted to over the last 15 months. It seems like it's been putting out one fire after another. So we really need to return to that. And I think when we have a newly seated board, that would be the perfect time to do that. Process improvement. As I mentioned earlier, that's something that's very important to me. I've been cautious of not proceeding too quickly. I wanted to establish myself with the management team and the staff in this department and I'm sorry, in the county, and really understand our business before I started suggesting how everything should be changed. And for me, process improvement is really about engaging with the employees, and it really needs to be a ground up effort with some guidance. I think that's very important. We talked about the community development, public works permitting efficiencies. Also very interested in financial processes. New World System's a pretty good tool. I don't think it was ever properly configured. It has a lot of capabilities that we don't even use. We need to spend a lot of time and effort in improving our processes, getting rid of paper processes so that our financial system flows smoothly. That'll make us more efficient as an organization. It'll provide more timely and accurate financial information. I also want to expand the current management training program. I think we have a very good program in place. One of the things that I would like to see us do is add a capstone project for process improvement as part of that curriculum. That's something we did at the state with our certified public managers training that I was heavily involved in, and I think that would be a great benefit to the county. I also want to expand and encourage process improvement initiatives in other departments, but those are the main areas that I'm interested in focusing on. We are desperate need of assessing our IT infrastructure and develop a modernization roadmap and funding model for digital government services. We have a lot of antiquated technology. It is difficult to maintain. For instance, the assessor's office, some of their systems run off an old AS400. That is a computer that was rolled out by IBM when I was in middle school in the early 80s, and we're still using it. And it has tape backups with real tapes. We're never going to be able to modernize and be more efficient if we don't upgrade that IT infrastructure. It needs to be a priority for the county and needs to be prioritized just like we prioritize road maintenance and capital projects. We desperately need to revise the Douglas County Code, Chapter 20. That's been referred to earlier in this meeting. After we get the master plan updates complete, I think we need to dive into Chapter 20 and make improvements there. And I look forward to working with the board after the new year on that. I also want to work with the other local utilities on water management and expansion of the regional water system to ensure the sustainability of water use within the county. We've had a lot of discussions about the need for more coordination and planning. We have some legislation that requires water use planning, and we need to bring that all together. I've been having some informal dialogues with some of the GIDs on this, and it's something we need to formalize and move forward on. We do need to do some work to initiate a septic systems conversion program. That is one of the strategic priorities for the board to address the nitrate issues in our aquifer. I know that's a difficult subject, and other jurisdictions have done mass hookups of septic systems to utilities, and it's fraught with political peril. I know many years ago when Spanish Springs out in Sparks did that, there were large assessments on homeowners. We got to find a way to do that with minimizing costs on homeowners. And I have some ideas of how to do that. I think that's an important priority that we need to work on. We also need to develop permanent funding model for the stormwater program. The stormwater program was originally funded with one-time money from the board, from the general fund. And I think we need to find a path forward to have sustainable funding for that. We need to continue to refine and enhance our capital improvement program. We've had a lot of discussions about JLEC. There is design work being done on that. And that's something that we need to have a clear plan going forward about how we fund, how we prioritize and fund those capital needs. The same with funding for roads, and prioritization through the RTC and the Board of County Commissioners. Mueller's part of that conversation, of course, to make sure that our roads are well maintained and our road infrastructure is kept current with demands. The other things, maybe a little more amorphous, but I really think a lot about how we create and maintain a permanent culture of high ethics. Again, I'm not saying that most county employees, I think, are very ethical, but we can't let things like Tiregate ever happen again. And it can't just be me as the county manager saying this is important. How do we institutionalize that and sustain that when I'm not the county manager anymore? 10 years from now, how do we sustain that? Depending on how this evaluation goes, if I'm not the county manager by the end of today, how do we sustain that? I think that's very important. And we need to mentor our people to really develop a culture of creative problem solving and continuous process improvement. I hear from employees all the time, we do it this way because we've always done it that way. And people don't feel empowered to step out of that metric, to think about new ways of doing things. I think that's a culture thing that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time to cultivate. And lastly, I think it's really important that we tell our story. I think the public needs to know the value that county government provides to them. We too often hear about the things that are broken and aren't working. I know you as commissioners, you hear the complaints from members of the public about things that are broken or not working. Well, I can tell you there's a lot of things that are working very well, and we need to celebrate that and demonstrate that to the public. That is an important piece of what I want Melissa Blosser and our public information program to do going forward into the future. So those are just some kind of highlights. It's certainly not an exhaustive list, but those are some of the big priorities and goals that I have that I think are consistent with board priorities and goals. And with that, I thank you very much. And that concludes my comments.
It's the most we've heard out of you since you took office. Questions, comments from board members? Commissioner Ingalls.
Mr. Cates, would you summarize what you just told us in probably something like the county was kind of a mess when you came in?
Yes, sir. I'd say that's a fair assessment.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been working in the public sector since I was 19 years old. I have worked for city managers. I have worked for county managers. I have worked for some lousy managers. I've worked for some very good managers. In fact, one of my best friends, my best friend other than my wife, is a retired city manager. And we have had many discussions over the years about county management and city management. And I need to say that, Patrick, you have been a delight. I think that Douglas County was very, very fortunate in having you come here as our county manager. And I will respect your request not to have a merit raise, only because that was your request. I think that you have more than earned a merit raise, and I hope that for the sake of this county that you are a county manager here for a very long time. Thank you.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yes, thank you. I think Commissioner Engel's statement about the county being a mess was very apropos. I think it was, John, and I think Patrick has done an excellent job. I've been around here long enough. I have only been in government for 3.5 years, but I know about other county managers that have been here who have had conflicts with board members. I think Patrick works well with everybody. He's very fair-minded. I think that his prior experience, I mean, his contacts with the state and local officials around our state, the agencies, and his knowledge of how they operate has really been invaluable to the county. Patrick, you summarized the things that you have done, and I agree with all of them. And you've done them very well, and I think you're a good rudder for the county. Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I wanted to just say, Patrick, definitely the last county manager that was here came aboard to kind of fill his place and stayed much too long. And I think you are much improvement over the past county manager.
Oh, I certainly would echo all those sentiments. And I think you had the best goal-setting discussion, actually lecture that I've experienced with all the county managers we've had. And I certainly wouldn't take any exception with it. And I think the strategic plan aspect that you talked about with the new board is important. When there is a change in boards like this, you got to go back and review what the strategic plans were, and now you got to go back and see where you need to improve. And I think you're working on the right angles to get that done. And I think that your attitude toward dealing with all of us has been exceptional. And I think that you definitely have been an asset that we thought you would be to the county. And I appreciate your service, and I hope that you stay, like Carl O'Leary said, for a very long time. And that's more than 2 years. Okay.
That's a 5-year contract.
Yeah, I know. 2024. We signed it. All right. Ms. Lang, have we done anything or closed any of the loops that we're supposed to?
Thank you very much, Chairman Penzel, Wendy Lane, for the record. I believe that you are good. I would suggest that maybe there's a motion to honor Mr. Cate's request to withhold any merit increase this year, just for the record, but I would defer to whether Mr. Ritchie has any advice on that.
Well, the recommended motion does say approve a merit increase between 0 and 3. And should we opt for 0, that would pretty much take care of it, I believe. Is that correct, Mr. District Attorney?
Thank you, Chairman Penzel. Doug Ritchie, Deputy District Attorney. That's correct. Just the motion can contain 0% merit pursuant to the discussion of the board and county manager's request.
Yeah, I would think that if we approve a voluntary 0 increase, I think that using the term voluntary memorializes the fact that he suggested it. Would you not agree, Mr. Ritchie?
That's correct, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. So is there any further discussion by board members? Are we in agreement? Okay, then how about a motion from the board?
Chair, I move approval of a voluntary 0 merit increase for County Manager Patrick Cates, and I want to thank him for his service.
Let's qualify that. We don't want to have him be that 0 for the rest of his tenure here. Make it for a year.
Well, this is, yeah, but this is an annual review. So you'll be able to do it next year.
Okay.
Good point,
I'll
John.
second.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second, a motion by Commissioner Walsh and a second by Commissioner Rice with a caveat from Commissioner Ingalls. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, Mr. Cates. You got what you asked for.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all the board members for their kind words. Not going to lie, I had a lot of anxiety leading up to this moment. I'm pretty happy with the outcome. Thank you.
Good. It's good that our only employee is happy. Now your job is to please 600 others. All right.
It'll never happen.
Yeah, tough goal. Item 13, for presentation only, reports update county commission members concerning various boards and or commissions that they may be a member of or a liaison to, or meetings, functions they have attended. Gentlemen.
Chair?
Sir, go ahead.
I've got 3 items. One is in regard to the project to get film production companies in the area that we've been working with NNDA. Of course, all that stopped with the virus thing. However, we did manage to get a great photo of Job's Peak looking over the ranches towards the west. It is the shot that was used in The Shootist with John Wayne. And submitting these things to the Nevada Film Bureau website, they just don't take anything. They vet it pretty closely, and that has been accepted. It's now working for us. A couple of other things. These are a little bit. This is a good time for us all to take a look at this. I have some reservations about Zoom. They've been hacked by the Chi-Coms. I mean, we could be hacked right now and they could be inside our computers and we wouldn't even know it. And we use the Nimble equipment from Cisco in the IT department to smoke things out like this. And perhaps we might consider the WebEx product in lieu of Zoom. Does the same thing, costs the same, but it is a Cisco product and it has better security. Just a thought. And in regard to protests, Mr. Ritchie, do we have any kind of an ordinance that can back up the sheriff's department if people start protesting? I mean, all of a sudden you got like 10 or 20 people out there.
Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
Please, Mr. Ritchie.
To answer your question, yes, there are a number of different statutes that can be applied to people who are doing what we see in the news.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for your report and your suggestions. I'm sure now Mr. Cates' his annual review, by the way, he's taking copious notes on what you've said. Commissioner Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the only meeting I've been to recently is the Carson Sub-Conservancy District board meeting last night. We had some good presentations and some not so meaningful presentations, but one that sticks out in my mind the most is that we heard that the groundwater production report of the Douglas County Water Utility shows that even though there has been growth that has occurred, the groundwater usage has actually gone down. So that was good news. Other than that, I have nothing to report.
Commissioner Nelson?
Nothing to report this time.
And Commissioner Rice?
Yes, sir. A couple of things. As of July 8th, we are having the official groundbreaking for the event center in the parking lot of the Mont Bleu. It should take place about 11 o'clock for those that are interested. And the golf tournament, as I've reported before, is going to go on, however, be without spectators. And as you know, that the 4th of July fireworks have been canceled, and they're still looking to try to bring them back for Labor Day. And that's what I have.
Commissioner Rice?
Sir.
What's the date for the Edgewood event?
The Edgewood event starts on, let me bring my calendar back up again. Starts on Monday, July the 6th, and goes through Saturday the 11th.
Yeah, I'm just saying maybe there'd be some time and let the governor go into phase 3 and open it up. But
actually, unfortunately, with the planning that's gone on with the TV sponsors, I even if he changes, I don't see anything happening.
Yeah,
volunteers are not in place this year. The sponsors are not in place for this year. Even if he changes his mind, there's no way it can happen.
No.
Mr. Cates, you have any meetings you've attended or subjects you'd like to bring up other than what you've already done?
No, sir, nothing to report.
Mr. Ritchie?
Thank you, Chairman. No.
Any final
Amy's
comments?
Amy's got a big smile. Maybe she has something.
She got through today. She's really happy. All right. If there isn't anything else for the good of the order, we will call this meeting adjourned. Have a good day.
Closing public comment.
Final comment.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Public comment.
we almost got out.
Yeah, almost did. All right. At this point, then we'll open public comment.
Okay, I have 2 currently. I will play the first one.
You have 2 currently?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you play the public comment.
SLADE.
Public comment 413.
3, the contract with Wood Rogers in support of the master plan update. It was disappointing in your conversation on this item that there was no mention whatsoever of the 2016-17 study that was done by Wells Barnett of State Line, which is still relevant and likely accurate. Why pay for another study that will overlap, if not replicate, that study? Likewise, there was no mention of the existing socioeconomic, demographic, economic, housing, employment, and industry data that we already have. It's unlikely any of that has changed significantly since it was last done not long ago, except for the transitory effects of COVID-19. Why pay to replicate the data that already exists? Nor was there any discussion of the pro-development bias that the UNR Center for Economic Development will bring to the process, as they have already in the past. The county commissioners have been kicking this down the road for the last 4 years since this update was due in 2016. Commissioners Penzel, Walsh, and Nelson have been on the board that entire time. Now there seems to be a rush to get it done by December, which would be the last month on the board for likely 3 of the 5 board members. It would be far better to do this properly, with sufficient time to get adequate public input and to get it right, and leave the decision to the incoming board. Why are you spending that much money in this time of such dire financial issues? Why are you bailing out community development for failing to accomplish this in a timely manner, as they should have? On agenda item 11 regarding Moss Adams, Commissioner Walsh's statement that Moss Adams' comments were not political is absurd and offensive. His claims that they are simply facts because they come from unnamed stakeholders is incredibly naive. Those unnamed stakeholders are more likely to be more accurately referred to as special interest groups, who may be motivated more by profits than by the community good. It appears that Moss Adams took them at their word and did no further research or outreach to other groups. That is unacceptable in an internal auditor. Talking about a vocal minority of residents with strong anti-development sentiments when the greater community has repeatedly expressed its preference for slow growth, is a political statement based on limited information. To refer to the many citizens concerned about excessive growth as NIMBYs is insulting, uncalled for, and clearly political. Those biased, offensive political comments should have disqualified Moss Adams on this agenda item. To approve $300,000 for this item at this time of across-the-board cuts and fiscal uncertainty is irresponsible.
Good afternoon. My name is Dana Meyer, D-A-N-N-A-M-E-Y-E-R. I'm not addressing a specific agenda item. I just have some comments of my own. I attended a meet and greet sponsored by Commissioner Nelson at Casey's Restaurant. Mr. Noso stated at that meeting that there were 7,000 homes on the books. Commissioner Nelson corrected the number to 6,700. However, he did not clarify that only so many permits are issued each year by ordinance. Not even 1/10 of those can be built. This election period has been filled with misinformation and downright lies. The refugees from California have totally inflated property values. I suppose I should be happy since I own 2 properties here. At that meeting, I spoke to a young gal, a bartender at Casey. She said she works 3 jobs in order to live in Douglas County. Our sheriffs, teachers, and county workers cannot afford to live here. Commissioner Engels apparently did not even want any veterans here as well. It is not low-income housing. It is a need for affordable housing. On another note, apparently birds of a feather stick together. An associate of Commissioner Engels verbally accosted me to the extent we were told to take it outside from the room. The restaurant wanted to call the sheriff's office. Apparently, I had harassed Commissioner Engels. My only statements to Commissioner Engels is the disrespectful of wearing a hat at the meeting. According to the Sergeant of Arms of the Nevada State Assembly, hats are not worn doing county, state business. Even Senator Settlemyre and Mr. Wheeler take their hats off. I would like to see Commissioner Engels do that in respect to his fellow commissioners and to the people of Douglas County. Thank you.
Jeannie Shizuru, S-H-I-Z-U-R-U. I just want to inform Barry, Commissioner Penzel, when somebody comes before the commissioner, this is not, as I have done recently, this is my second time, and I've been accused of being personally hostile to him. So why should he give me any favors? Why should he consider my application? I think that somebody needs to retrain Barry about the role that he's playing as a commissioner. This is not Jeannie Shizuru coming to Barry Penzel for a personal favor. There is business that relates to the board, that he is the commissioner and I am a constituent coming forward to the board as I'm supposed to. I think that the district attorney's office needs to inform Barry that nobody needs a favor from him. We're expecting him to be a commissioner that can make a decision from a rational place instead of a personally injured, emotional place. And in regards to the meeting about the RDA2, when that fight broke out behind closed doors between Commissioner Penzel and Commissioner Engels, I would really hope, I think it was in May of 2016, I would hope that Commissioner Penzel would go back and watch that entire meeting. It was very apparent to everybody in the audience that Commissioner Penzel was not in a good mood. He actually picked a fight with Jim Slade, I think twice in that meeting, before he had the thing with Commissioner Engels, which caught Commissioner Engels by surprise behind closed doors. I wish that Commissioner Pensel would watch that meeting and look at his own behavior and his own hostility. But I would highly recommend that the district attorney's office talk to Commissioner Pensel and explain to him the difference between his personal feelings and his role as a commissioner. Thank you.
Ellie Waller, W-A-L-L-E-R. I have some issues still with going forward with this master plan revision without community plans being added to the scope of work. The community plans are the crux of all that the rezoning is undoing, and it is not fair to the local communities to have these ideas of rezoning overriding our current community and what we want in the future. I agree with Mr. Slade's comments entirely that this should wait until the next board is in place, and in the meantime have staff start the community plan outreach process. I just think that it's the cart before the horse still. Thank you.
Chairman Amy Poole, for the record, that is the last voicemail that we have. You're still muted, sir.
What did you say, Amy?
I'm sorry, that was the last voicemail. Public comment.
Yeah, I said we'd wait 3 more minutes.
Okay.
Since it stopped at 4:20. We waited 5 minutes since somebody last called. Any further remarks from anybody? Then we will consider this meeting, Mr.
We have a
Nichols.
meeting tomorrow at 1.
I think tomorrow at 4.
4?
Correct.
Right.
But I'm sure we'll have one that's at 1 next week sometime. So stay tuned. Okay, we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good day, everyone.